we have another letter today too from my friend Monica. I have known Monica for 12 years, 11 years, 11 years. She is a first-time mom. She is 33. Excuse me. She's 33. She has a son. His name is Gabriel. And we bonded a lot when she was pregnant. And I'll just let the letter kind of explain. She had difficulties in her final trimester. She has a little bit of anxiety that she suffers from, and it sometimes that can make mommy brain go into overdrive especially when you're a first-time mom and you don't know what to expect. So I'm going to read Monica's letter to you now. When I reached my third trimester, with my due date looming, I did as most women do. I began to nest. There is, of course, the usual manner of nesting that we've all heard of and indubitably all experienced: cleaning, purging, and rearranging the house. But I believe that another form of nesting is suddenly consuming as much information as possible about giving birth and knowing what to do with your baby from newborn to preschool age. I fell deep into that spiral of, I just looked up, when can baby have solids? How did I end up here? As an anxious person, this information overload was both a way for me to prepare as much as possible, as well as work myself up into what-if induced insomnia. It was during this state of over-preparation that I learned I would need a birthing plan. I proceeded to spend the next month formulating the perfect plan with all the details and instructions my nurses could possibly need. It was 3 pages long. Imagine my surprise. Wait, no, better word choice is dismay. Yes, dismay. I imagine my dismay when from start to finish, from labor to holding baby B in my arms, when literally every single bullet on my birthing plan went out the window. Okay, not every. We got to control one item out of a good 15 or so. My labor began about 10:30 p.m., and I knew that it was real labor by about 1 a.m. I had been having pre-labor for nearly a week, so I wasn't going to wake up unless I was absolutely certain it was time. My mother had driven down to be here for the birth, but as Hurricane Michael had devastated my town, and it still had not fully recovered, thus every hotel was booked solid with displaced persons and out-of-town work crews, my mother had to stay in a hotel 45 minutes away. I was unable to reach her when I was ready to go to the hospital, calling her cell, my aunt's cell, and her room phone. She was finally roused by the hotel staff banging on her door for me, but by then it was after 2 and I was already in the hospital. During that check that they do when you initially come into labor and delivery to see how far along you are, I had an experience so traumatic that it has made me fearful to ever return to the hospital I gave birth in. The doctor who checked me was so rough, I was in tears. And then they accidentally burst my water prematurely. What should have taken hours to occur naturally, they had now accelerated my laboring process to the nth degree. It was about 3 when I was at 4 centimeters, and they had just broken my water. By 5:30, I was at 10 centimeters and ready to push. And to make matters worse, they discovered meconium in the amniotic fluids, which meant I would not be able to donate my placenta as I had planned. Combined with being back labor, all of this had put me in excruciating pain. I mean, probably no more than so many strong women endure with their own birthing experiences, but it was bad for me. I had gone into this intending to have no drugs and to utilize hypnobirthing techniques. I had studied them for weeks, practiced meditation, put together a playlist that would allow me to drown everything out and go into my happy place. But everything on my birthing plan that would help set the best environment and ambiance for me in the hospital. But no amount of meditation and deep breathing was getting me through the pain. So I caved and ordered an epidural. They came and administered the epidural around 4:30, and I was finally floating on a cloud. They returned about an hour later to check my progress after having the epidural, only to find that I was now 10 centimeters. It's all a bit fuzzy, but I'm pretty sure they only came in to check because I told them I was feeling the urge to push. And it wasn't until they checked me this time that they realized my baby was not in the proper birthing position. Despite being checked days before and having it confirmed that my B was head down, despite them checking me when I came in, it was only just now discovered that my baby was butt down. So now I would not be having a vaginal birth, and there would be no delayed cord cutting. Everything about the natural birth I wanted was clearly not meant to be. I began to have a panic attack and was so worked up I was throwing up repeatedly. They obviously couldn't cut me if I was throwing up and trembling the way I was, so they administered Zofran and Benadryl. Well, what a wonderful time to discover that I was allergic to Benadryl. As soon as the Benadryl took effect, I can't explain what happened to me that I went catatonic. I felt trapped inside my own body and became completely unable to move or speak. While a nurse repeatedly tried to get me to respond, they performed the C-section and delivered my perfect baby boy. I could hear everything that was happening, but because my head was turned to get some oxygen whilst panicking, I could see nothing. Not even my little boy being pulled out and taken to have his lungs cleared nearby, as they had a little meconium to work out. And as I remained locked inside my body, the staff were frantically trying to figure out what was the matter with me, even calling out to the psych ward. I can't recall what type of doctor he was, but one arrived who knew that I had experienced a rare reaction with Benadryl and that I would be fine after a few hours of recovery. I had actually had this reaction before, but at the time it occurred, I had no idea it was the Benadryl that had caused it. My baby had been taken out of the room by now. My husband taking him to the room we would be staying in and letting my family meet him, while I was wheeled down to a recovery ward alone. I finally regained control of myself after about half an hour of IV fluids. They kept me for an hour more before finally taking me to my room to my baby. I had lost the window of the golden hour with my baby of skin-to-skin bonding and breastfeeding establishment with my baby. Every member of my family who had come for the birth got to meet my son before I did. I think somewhere between the traumatic experience of having my water forcibly broken to being one of the last faces for my son to see on his first day of life, that is where my depression began. And the breastfeeding, the breastfeeding. It became very apparent very quickly that we were going to have difficulties with it. I had gotten my hopes up with all these fluffy stories on the internet about babies crawling up their mother's body and latching, about how easy and natural breastfeeding was, about how lactation specialists were always on demand to help you through any difficulties you might be having. It was all bullshit for me. My son was not a natural at latching. My nipples were flat, my breasts engorged because I had already let down, which the nurses weren't convinced of until they had become dangerously hard and swollen. The lactation specialist could only visit for about 10 minutes once a day, and both she and the nurses were so rough and forceful with making my baby latch that we were both bawling. They finally gave me nipple shields to try, which did help at first. Finally, my B could get the nutrients he needed, after they had already supplemented sugar water and then formula. But it was not long before, even with the shield, he wouldn't feed. Latching was no longer a problem, but the rate at which my milk flowed was unsatisfactory to him, so he would get frustrated after a few pulls and start crying. I couldn't stand to hear him cry anymore. I felt like a complete failure as a mother because we could not master this one simple task. I just wanted him to be happy and to have a full tummy. So I started pumping exclusively. I was taking the maximum recommended amount of milk flow and eating a high-protein diet and chugging water and Gatorade to produce as much as possible. Thanks to this, I actually had no issues producing, but because I was producing about 8 ounces every 2 hours, I had to freeze most of what I made. My breasts pretty much stayed engorged. My husband had to massage them while I pumped to keep them from hurting so much, and I began to feel like I was chained to the pump. I stopped taking the milk flow and my production dropped dramatically. I was lucky to get 4 ounces every 2 hours now. And then I finally got sick of the feeling that I was a dairy cow with a machine attached to me for 20 minutes every 2 hours, preventing me from bonding with my baby during that time. So I pumped less and less. I finally stopped altogether when my B was a little over a month old and switched to formula. While this made the both of us so much happier, I never stopped feeling like a failure as both a woman and a mother for being unable and unwilling to keep breastfeeding, or pumping. Having these feelings in addition to all the other crap I was having to endure and learn as a first-time mom is what tipped the baby blues into postpartum depression for me. It took months to overcome my PPD, months where I struggled with the will to live, because I was convinced that if I could not manage breastfeeding, surely I would fail at all the other important steps in my son's life, and he would be better off without me. Something that really helped me get through it was hearing from so many other women, especially those I never would have imagined that they had suffered from PPD too. Not as a misery loves company scenario, but knowing that I was not alone and I was not any more messed up or scared than a lot of other women. So, the things I want to tell you with this very long letter are as follows. Number 1, don't lay all your hopes and dreams on that birth plan. There's so much that is going to be out of your control once your labor begins, and while it can make you feel like you have some measure of control by making the plan, you can also be left really disappointed if anything goes off the rails. Number 2, no matter which opinion is trending right now, fed will always be best. Breastfeeding is wonderful and a natural thing to do, and I am so happy that it's making a comeback in the Western world. But if trying it is causing you and your baby more frustration and sadness than serenity and happiness, don't be afraid to use formula. And don't read the comments on any Facebook post, article, or forum thread regarding how to feed your baby, because you're setting yourself up for being made to feel ashamed. And number 3, if you get postpartum depression, you are not alone. It is so much more common than you think, and while it is still taboo to talk about mental health issues in our society, you'll find a lot of women are open to share about their own struggle if you reach out to them. Talk to your OBGYN or your child's pediatrician immediately if you think you might have PPD or even just baby blues. They can get you on medication that helps. And there are medications that won't affect your baby through breast milk, such as Zoloft. Hashtag not sponsored. They may also recommend that you see a therapist, but it's not often moms with newborns have that kind of time or spare money to see a professional. So that's when you seek help from the other women who have suffered from PPD or are currently suffering from it. Talking about it with someone who knows what's up helps, and you can support each other through it, because we women tend to be a lot better at taking care of others than we are at taking care of ourselves. I definitely read this before I read it out loud to you guys, and I still got emotional.
Yeah.
Because I was not there in person, because we don't live in the same city anymore. Well, we never technically lived in the same city, but my husband lived in the same city as them for a long time. But I remember when this was happening. I remember her telling me about how her birth went when we saw them when the baby was 2 days old in the hospital. And it was not what I wished for my friend at all. And it was difficult because I wanted to be there in person for her. I didn't have experience with everything that she was going through, but I offered my support the whole time anyways, because that's what you do as a community, as being in your mommy village, you support each other. And it was really difficult, and it was a long struggle. And Gabriel is so happy and healthy now, and that's what's important. And Monica is also healthy now, and there's still struggles, sometimes it takes time, but she's doing better now because she found other people who could relate, who maybe they didn't have the exact same experience, but they had been through postpartum depression. I remember thinking, baby blues. It's just baby blues. It's going to be okay. I'm going to work through it. And it wasn't. And as Monica and I talked more and more, then that's when she went and saw our doctor, because you can try to convince yourself that it's baby blues, but if it's not, you really have to be open about it and seek medical attention, because that's the only way that it's going to help it get better, along with your friend's support. It's hard to talk about, but that's why I'm so grateful to her for sharing this, because it was it's still a long journey, and it's definitely very emotional, and I'm very proud of her for sharing it with us and letting us put it out here, so that hopefully something in that will help one of you as well.
Hey moms, thanks for stopping by and checking out this installment of Humanizing Moms. If you like what we're doing, let us know by hitting the like button or commenting below. To check out more of the series, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to get notified when the next installment is up. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.